Following from the episode 81, today we are taking a look at a few more stories about haunted objects. If you missed the previous episode, I put a link in the description and at the corner of the screen. Korean shamanism is basically a human-centric belief system. In the Western world, where its belief system evolves around the god, it is often assumed as the work of evil when an object is said to be haunted. Stories of possessed dolls are most prominent examples of the case. In Korea, it's more common to assume it's the previous owner's attachment and obsession that lingers on around the object. It is not so surprising when, according to traditional shamanism, even gods are created and die depending on people's worship or lack thereof. It is not too difficult to understand the logic if you see it from the grand scheme of karma, that everything is linked and every action creates reaction. It's not the world of good and evil, but the world of causality. With that in mind, let's delve into today's stories. Old mirror, clothes, and wardrobe that came with a tangled-up history. 5 allegedly true stories about haunted objects, as always handpicked, translated, and narrated by a host, Anthony. During the summer vacation of 2004, I was a high schooler and deeply into online games. One day I was taking a nap as usual after the nightly routine of gaming. It was Mom's call that woke me up.
You know that empty plot where people dump their stuff, don't you? I found a beautiful wardrobe decorated with mother of pearls. It's practically new.
I couldn't be bothered, but Mom was insistent, and in the end I dragged our handcart out to the said dumping ground. The mother-of-pearl wardrobe was indeed very clean, though I wasn't fond of the old-fashioned style. Mom said it would fit perfectly in my room and exchanged my old wardrobe with it. About 3 days later, I was watching TV in the living room and heard noise of opening door. The wardrobe door had opened ajar by itself. I checked to see if the hinge was loose or something, but I couldn't find anything obvious, so I just used a rubber band around its handle as a temporary measure. Then one morning, I woke up and found the rubber band broken, and the wardrobe door left opened ajar. It was about then I started noticing that the family pet dog would be barking in front of my room. When I opened the room door to her, she would rush to the wardrobe and jumped and scratched at it ferociously. I got a bit scared of the wardrobe, but I was going through the period of teenage angst and didn't want to talk about such a thing with my mom. I just increased the number of rubber bands around the wardrobe door handle and consciously ignored the whole thing. 2 weeks passed. I was in bed already in the early evening one day. I turned around towards the wardrobe and just then got a sleep paralysis. Unable to move or even close my eyes, I had to watch. The wardrobe door pushing out, trying to open, till the rubber bands stretched and broke one by one. When the last band broke, I saw something between the open door. It was an elderly woman. Her skin was blue beyond pale, and her eyes were all black, and the pure hate glaring in them. Her arms stretched out through the open door and about to grab my head, but I just couldn't move but helplessly watch it all. It was then my dog rushed in and attacked the hand. The hand then caught the dog by its hind leg and threw it to the wall. I could finally move, so I rescued the whining dog and ran out of the room. I could see hair pulled out from my dog's leg, but I still didn't want to believe what I just saw was real. It must have been just a nightmare. But facing in front of the wardrobe, the broken rubber bands and dog hair scattered around, I couldn't deny it anymore. Mom didn't believe at first, until she saw the rubber bands and dog hair herself. So we took it out to the dumping ground again. Seeing us, a guy ran to us and asked, "You took it from here, didn't you?" And then called somebody. Not long after, a middle-aged couple came over in a hurry. The husband dropped in front of the wardrobe and bursted into tears. "I'm sorry, Mom. Forgive me." Apparently, the wardrobe used to belong to Man's mother. It was her most prized possession, and she would always wipe it clean. She suffered Alzheimer in her later years. One day, her house got on fire. Other family members searched for the old lady, but could not find her and had to escape in the end. After the fire was put off, the old lady was found inside the wardrobe, dead. Her son threw the wardrobe away for it having been a coffin and death trap for his mother. But right from that night, his late mother appeared in his dream, shouting, "Where is my wardrobe? Bring it back to me!" But the wardrobe was already in my room by the time he came back to the dumping ground. He asked the local junk shop dealer to seek for the wardrobe, and indeed he found me and Mom bringing the wardrobe back to the dumping ground. I asked the man to show me the photo of his late mother, and indeed she was the one who glared at me from the inside the wardrobe. Later he burnt up the wardrobe with a ritual for his mother, and I was present there too, praying for the peaceful passing of the old lady. And that night, I saw her one more time in my dream, simply saying, "Take care." And that was the end of my little summer days saga. About a month ago, I bought an old Levi's 569 jeans from a vintage shop. I didn't realize it at the shop, but when I tried it on back home, found something in the pocket. An old high school student ID from 1966, a ticket from a spec shop, and a couple of photos of a man probably in his 40s. I just shrugged and put them away in my desk drawer. It was a vintage pair of jeans after all. So I went to my uni in that new jeans. I often doze off during the lecture, as I did that day too, and experienced the first sleep paralysis in my life. I found myself unable to move. After some struggle, I barely managed to open my eyes and saw a pair of eyes looking right back at me. The face was so close up to mine, the eyes were the only thing I could see. I woke up screaming, embarrassing myself in front of my professor and colleagues. I creeped out a bit because it was my first sleep paralysis, but didn't think too much of it. But paralysis came time after time whenever I fell asleep. Remembering the eyes, I kept my eyes shut. But after a week of constant paralysis, I was so frustrated that I just opened my eyes again to face whatever there was. And there was a guy. I could not make out the details in the dark, but it was a guy staring down at me. And then I managed to wake up, but I felt odd, as if my body didn't belong to me. Indeed, it moved on its own will, and soon I was going through the jeans pockets. I was at it like a madman, as to rip off the jeans itself, and carried on until my brother saw me and shook me up. I spent the rest of the night sleepless, thinking over and over what was happening to me. Was I possessed or something? Then it flashed to me that the guy I saw earlier during the paralysis looked familiar. I checked through the old ID and photos from my jeans. I wasn't sure with a photo on the old student ID, but his later photo as middle-aged assured me it was he. I was all goosebumps, but still couldn't understand who he should be and what he wanted from me. My family isn't superstitious at all, so I couldn't discuss it with them either. Should I burn them altogether with the jeans? Should I try to find who this man was based on his student ID? Undecided and unsure, a few days passed. And then one evening I was home alone when the power went out. I could see in the other buildings in the apartment complex, lights were still on. I peeped out the front door and the hallway light came on too. So it was just my apartment that lost the power. I remembered I left my phone by the computer, so I fumbled my way to it, picked it up, turned its screen on, and turned around. I felt something black, something darker than darkness, blocking my way. I stopped, not daring to lift my eyes from the phone screen, and in that faint light, I saw a hand. A right hand stretched out to me, its palm up, as if asking for something. I just knew it must be the same guy. Just then the lights came on, and with that the hand disappeared too. I had put all the ID and stuff back in the jeans pocket and put it deep in my closet. But I'm not sure what to do now. I've been told that I should not casually pick up a second-hand or discarded stuff, that you never know what kind of history it might come with. But I never really cared about such old taboo. What's wrong with the free stuff? It should come on my way, I thought. And then, a few years ago, I had to quickly move into a new room. In the new room was a full-length mirror that seemed to be what the former occupant didn't bother to take with her. It was in a good condition and I kept it for myself. A free stuff? Why not? Into about 10 days in the new place, I noticed I wasn't feeling quite myself. I usually sleep deep and wake up refreshed, but in that room I got frequently nightmares and would always wake up feeling drowsy. Poor sleep soon led to chronic headache and general weakness. After work, I would just sit around in the room aimlessly and went to bed. Such situation continued over a month. It was on one off day I sensed my state was beyond normal tiredness. I was spaced out God knows for how long, and when I snapped out, I realized I had been looking at myself in the mirror the whole time. Why was I looking in the mirror? Suddenly the mirror felt all sinister. I decided to get rid of it, but the mirror was damn heavy, which didn't make any sense. It was large, but just a piece of glass and a thin wooden panel, and when I moved it around when I first moved in, I had no problem at all. But now, tried my might, I could barely carry it a few steps at a time. It wasn't just its weight either. My body stiffened up and my head got stinging migraine. I got scared, but it only made me more determined to take that damn thing out of my room. I think I used all my energy by the time I took it out of the building and felt my legs shaking as I walked up the stairs back to my room. Whether the mirror had really something about it or not, deep, sound sleep returned again, and I quickly recovered too. It could all have been a coincidence of timing, but I'm definitely more cautious now about what I bring back and put in my home. I used to share a one-room flat with a mate. As any students, we lived on a tight budget and didn't have extra duvet and pillow. That was a bit of an issue when one of our friends crashed at our place, which happened regularly. One day, about 4 years ago, we came across somebody left a set of duvet and 2 pillows on the used clothes collection box. They looked perfectly fine, and we gladly brought them with us. And, well, as soon as we put down the duvet, my pet cat jumped on it and pissed all over. I tell you, you can't get rid of a smell of cat piss, not from cotton wool-filled duvet. In the end, we had to throw it out again. The pillows were not saved from the cat either. One pillow was red and the other green, and for some reason, Cat took the liking of the red one and used it as her scratcher. Nevertheless, the pillow stayed and sometimes got to be used. Problem was, whenever I slept on the red pillow, the same woman appeared in the dream. Dressed in white, she would say something, but I could never understand what she meant. It wasn't just me and my flatmate either. Any visitor who happened to stay with us and sleep on the red pillow would dream of that woman too. One of them was a devout Catholic, and we didn't tell him anything about the red pillow. I was woken up in the middle of the night by somebody mumbling something. It was that friend chanting a prayer with his cross pendant in his hand. In the morning, he seemed to have forgot the details, except that he had a nightmare. I'm anyway prone to have sleep paralysis often, and wasn't particularly creeped out by the pillow or the dream, but other friends took it obviously as more scary. And well, despite of it all, we somehow kept the pillow. And then, about 2 years ago, my flatmate got his own room and moved out. And since then, I didn't see the woman in my dream, and nor my cat use the pillow as her favorite scratcher. Then one night, past 3 in the morning, my ex-flatmate knocked on my door. I assumed he was too drunk to go back to his own place, but no, it wasn't that. Apparently, the appearance of the woman in white got intensified since he moved, he explained. That night too, the woman pestered his sleep. Disturbed and scared, he came around to see how I was doing, if she appeared in my dream too. He even burnt his pillow in desperate attempt, but the woman still appeared. There was a Buddhist temple near his room, and one could hear their morning chant already at the crack of dawn, about 4 or 5. and the woman would leave him alone only with the sound of monks chanting. Thankfully, he discarded his bad stuff altogether as he got to move once again, and since then the woman stopped appearing in his dream. I too moved to a different place meanwhile, and the red pillow is not with me anymore. There would be no way to find out what exactly was happening, who that woman was, what was it with a red pillow, or if indeed it was about the pillow, considering the woman moved out with my flatmate. It's from the time when I was a teenager. Time was the end of 1990s, and you should all know what happened to the nation then. The major financial crisis of 1997, so-called IMF period, hit us all hard. On the news were headlines of major corporations having gone bankrupt, how much the stock market tanked further day after day. The company my dad worked for was not saved from the turmoil either. Dad was one of the founding members of it, and he spent his whole working years to nurture it and see it grow, and now he had to see it at the brink of bankruptcy. Still, it was in much better position comparing to other companies in the same business sector. Many closed down, some owners even ran away with his staffs chasing for months of unpaid salary. Dad's salary was cut heavily, but at least he still got it. He stopped watching news then. He who used to turn on the primetime news like a clockwork. He even cancelled the newspaper subscriptions. There was no reason to get further stressed out with bad news when his hand was already full with his own. And it was from that winter that strange things started happening to my family. By then we'd been living in the same house for 10 years, and thus far no such a thing happened. What I want to say is that the house was not haunted or something. The first instant was, one morning Mom woke up early as usual to prepare my and my sister's lunch boxes. She had headaches and nausea. She wondered, but the sense of duty was stronger and was about to turn on the gas stove to start cooking. It was my sister who stopped her in time. "Mom, isn't it gas leaking?" Her shout was loud enough to wake me and my dad. Dad rushed out and smelt the gas thick in the air. As for my mom, she suffered chronic sinusitis and failed to detect the smell earlier. Apparently, the rubber gas tube connected to the stove was torn a bit, letting the gas out. Mom was appalled and claimed it wasn't like that the previous night. Indeed, by fact I know, Mom would check all the doors and windows and every corners of the house before bed, and I believe her. Had my sister shouted just a few seconds later, then my family might have been killed altogether. Second instant wasn't quite as dramatic, but just as bizarre. My dad came back home at dawn after several days of non-stop working to save the company. He was too exhausted to even take a shower and just sprawled out on the sofa. His heavy eyes were about to close when he saw the light in his bedroom coming on and then off again after a few seconds, and it repeated many times. What was up with wifey? He wondered, but couldn't bother to get up. He simply turned around and fell asleep. After a well-deserved sleep, he realized that his wife and kids were away to visit her parents and he was alone home. He checked his bedroom. The light was off and tidy as Mom had left it. There was no sign of any intruder either. Third incident took place at Dad's work. His company closed for a short period of time in desperate attempt to cut costs. Dad was looking around to make sure every equipment and security were in place before locking things up. He found in the storage heavy-duty plastic pallets were stored on their sides. Dad worried if they wouldn't fall down like domino pieces, but they were too heavy to move by himself. As he slowly walking towards the exit, thunderous thud was heard from behind him. Just as he imagined, the pallets were falling exactly to the direction of him. He later commented the only thing in his mind at that moment was, "I'm dead." He ran and jumped like a baseball player, sliding to the base, just barely missing a dozen of pallets crushing down on him. He got a couple of ribs cracked and his arms and knees all bruised, but he still laughed and said, "I'm still alive, and that's what matters." But that was still just one of a series of incidents. Shortly after that accident, it was a snowy day, and the whole family was gathered around the TV. Then the TV went off, and before we could even say, "Huh?" the lights, too, went off in the whole house. I went to my room to fetch my torch, and Mom to her bedroom for candles. When she found a candle and match there, somebody poked at her back. It was too small a finger to be Dad's, so Mom assumed it to be my sister, and turned around saying, "What is it, girl?" Only to find nobody. She shrugged, lighted a candle, and brought it out to the living room. It was Dad who saw it. Behind Mom, walking over with a candle in her hand, was a woman with her long hair down and in white dress. He says he was too shocked even to make a single sound. "A ghost," he thought. Right at the moment, lights came back on, and with that, the mystery woman also disappeared. "What's wrong, honey?" was the first thing Mom said. We all looked at Dad, and he was frozen with a gaping mouth and paper-white complexion. After a few seconds of freeze, Dad said, I think our home is haunted." My dad used to be a skeptic and call shamans and fortune tellers all con and fraud, but he couldn't deny what he witnessed with his own eyes. And soon it wasn't just him either. One day both my parents were away, and I too was out to play basketball with my buddies. My sister had 3 of her friends to the empty house. As the dusk started setting in, they decided to have something to eat at a snack bar nearby. And while they were digging in a plate of tteokbokki, one of her friends asked,
"Do you have a sister?"
"Huh? I just have an older brother," my sister said.
"But then, didn't you say your mom was out?"
her friend said. Apparently the friend saw the door to my parents' room opened ajar and saw somebody sitting in front of Mom's vanity, the back of a woman with a long hair. It was I who found my sister standing in front of the house that evening. She was too scared to go back home alone and was waiting for other family members for hours outside in the cold of the winter. And then, it was when Dad went to his hometown for the reunion with his childhood friends there. There were fewer participants than usual, most likely due to the hard economy of the time. As they greeted each other, Dad noticed a friend going visibly startled as he saw my mom. As the evening progressed around the barbecue, that same friend came over to Dad and discreetly asked, "Is everything all right with your family?" It was a loaded question, but Dad pretended not picking it up. "I'll be straight," the friend said. "I see something behind your wife. I find her overcoat suspicious. Do you know where it's from?" According to him, he first thought my mom was possessed when he sensed a presence behind her, but he realized it was her coat when she took it off to hang it up to the coat hanger. He sensed something resentful lingering around it. Now, this friend was the son of the once richest family in town, but from teenage years he suffered various misfortunes and ailments, and declared by multiple shamans that he was destined to become a shaman. His dad refused it, but just as the shamans predicted, the family lost their fortune. Knowing his history, Dad couldn't take his verdict lightly. The coat was indeed a recent purchase. During the financial crisis, people selling their stock for quick cash on truck or on street became a common scene. Sale on shit price had become a common term. Anyway, Mom bought the coat from such a vendor. It was from a good brand and would have been sold at a major department store in the better time. My dad recounted a string of incidents in his mind and realized it was all shortly after the purchase of the new coat. Soon other friends around picked up their conversation and joined in. One of them worked in the clothes production and asked to have a close look at the coat. He checked it inside out and fumbled along the seam. He then asked Mom, "How often have you been wearing this? Have you altered it anyway?" Which Mom didn't. "It's not new," he declared. It was a quality product of that brand, all right, but a touched-up second-hand product. The first friend said, "Get rid of it as soon as possible." But it was haunted by a resentful soul, and best to offer a ritual before burning it off. Well, there already were meat and drinks for the occasion, and following the friend's instruction, a prompt ritual was set and performed. Nothing noticeable happened, except the fire was high and fierce fall from a coat. But perhaps it was just a dry high winter wind, Dad says. There's no way we find out what kind of history the coat came with and who that spirit was. All we can say for sure is nothing strange further happened that day on. As Dad's friend predicted, Dad's company survived through the financial crisis, and his position rose as he proved himself to be a faithful member through the hard time. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed today's stories. I think our relationship to stuffs have changed a lot in the past one generation or two. When things were rarer and more expensive, people had stronger attachment to their objects. A pair of shoes would last till they wore off, or a home appliance would last, well, practically a lifetime. With things so abundant today, we don't care so much about them anymore. And if haunted objects are born out of our attachment and obsession, there are probably less number of haunted objects today. What do you think? Can I feel more light-hearted about buying second-hand stuffs? By the way, I seem to have collected enough haunted object stories for another episode. I'll continue with the theme one more week. There will be even more gripping stories, so stay tuned. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a like and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel. If you'd support me more directly, I also have a Buy Me a Coffee account. The link's in the description. Buy Me a Coffee supporters are getting an early access to my new video. Thank you. Until the next